Tonight on Hindsight, Boko Haram attacks on Nigerian territory have increased in recent weeks. The latest attack on NNPC explorers in Maiduguri has raised fresh fears of a resurgence of Boko Haram and its deadly attacks. But the African Union says it is ready to help Nigeria in its quest to crush Boko Haram. But can it really? Also on the program, we bring you the latest developments from Venezuela. That country held an election to elect a constituent assembly on Sunday. The opposition did not participate in the election. It says it is an attempt to grab power by President Nicolas Maduro. In response, the U.S. in the last 24 hours has slammed fresh sanctions on Venezuelan officials, including freezing the assets of the president. I am SEGUN OJUMU. Welcome to Hindsight. SEGUN OJUMU. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid too.
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria.
we begin the program here in Nigeria, where an African Union Peace and Security Council delegation has been on a visit. Nigeria chaired the council for the month of July. Nigeria's ambassador to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the African Union, Bankole Adeoye, chaired the council. Mr. Bankole and his team were at the office of Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyama, and also at the presidential villa to meet with acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. Now, before we bring you details of those meetings, let's bring you an interview we had with the chair of the AU's Peace and Security Council, that's Bankole Adeoye, when we caught up with him at the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I asked him what he hopes Nigeria will achieve by the end of its time as chair of the Peace and Security Council. Watch.
Nigeria is a leading voice. Nigeria is a leader. Nigeria is a champion of the African cause. African cause in terms of development, sustainable development, inclusive growth and development. Nigeria has been a founding member of the then OAU and now the African Union. So my mandate as ambassador and permanent representative of Nigeria to the African Union will entail promoting Nigeria's core interest, strategic interest of good neighborliness, of promoting friendly relations with all countries of the member states of the AU, and championing the programs, the three top programs of the administration of His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, mainly anti-corruption, the issues of economic diversification, and peace and security. And that leads me to the chairmanship of the Peace and Security Council. During the month of July, Nigeria has been endorsed as the chair for the month of July in the Peace and Security Council. The Peace and Security Council is the primary policy organ of the African Union in trying to maintain and sustain peace and security and stability on our continent. Nigeria's priorities during the month of July will engage on practical steps and strategies to address and tackle terrorism and violent extremism, and the conflicts that relate to Mali and the Sahel, Libya, Guinea-Bissau, and a number of situations, including the ongoing lingering crisis in Somalia. Nigeria has brought a new dimension to the Peace and Security Council by emphasizing the need for all member states to address what we call the issue of child soldiering and promoting the interest of children in schools. So we're going to be addressing what we call millions of Africans who are out of school children, especially girls, in conflict zones.
Now, at the AU summit in Addis Ababa last month, security was a dominant theme. The consensus was that Africa must address its security needs. Nigeria, for the last 6 years, has tried to contain the threat posed by Boko Haram. The insurgency of Boko Haram has transcended Nigeria's borders into Chad, Cameroon, and Niger. And of course, the aftermath of the insurgency has left millions in the region displaced and in need of basic amenities, food, shelter, and health care. Next, the Peace and Security Council delegation led by Ambassador Bankole Adeoye was at a meeting with Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs. We'll now bring you what both men said at that meeting.
Struggle against one of the deadliest, in fact, statistically, the deadliest terrorist group in the world. You've had an opportunity to visit the member states of the multinational joint task force, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. And of course, you're here now. You were up in Maiduguri, so you've been able to get a first-hand assessment of the situation, of the challenges we're facing. Of course, it's not a local matter. Terrorism is a global challenge. It's a challenge that a lot of other African countries are facing, north, east, west. So we are all in this together. And, you know, we have to work together, and it's absolutely important that our regional body, the African Union, should be fully, engaged, and we appreciate that engagement.
We have been on a mission for 5 days, 7 cities, 4 countries, and we have seen the havoc wreaked by Boko Haram. We have also seen the environmental degradation of the Lake Chad, which has been natural. We have also seen the security situation, and most importantly, we have seen human beings whose livelihood.
Now, the AU Peace and Security team was also at the presidential villa to meet with acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. The acting president told the team countries in the Lake Chad Basin have worked well together to curb the scourge of terrorism in the region and now have to manage the humanitarian crisis that has resulted. Our State House correspondent Kehinde Amodu was there.
The Peace and Security Council of the African Union is the standing organ for the prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts. Membership of the 15-member council is drawn from Central, Eastern, Northern, Southern, and Western Africa. The collaboration of countries in the Lake Chad Basin is one that has demonstrated that Africans working together can resolve their own issues. The acting president is particularly impressed by the progress of the multinational joint task force set up to address the terrorist insurgency, despite initial difficulties between the militaries of the 4 contributing countries. But he says that the humanitarian consequences of the insurgency have been compounded by deep poverty, making the cost of dealing with the situation huge and enormous. Chairperson of the Peace and Security Council for the month of July is Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, who is also Nigeria's ambassador to Ethiopia and to the AU. He agrees with the acting president that tackling the humanitarian crisis in the region is of utmost importance.
Peace is gradually returning. We need to thank the gallantry and appreciate the gallantry of our armed forces, not only of Nigeria, but the 3 other countries of the Lake Chad Basin and Benin Republic, for the good record they have achieved. However, it is now time for us to consolidate on the rehabilitation, the reconstruction, and the reintegration, so that our people can go back to the areas and their communities in safety and in dignity.
There are other issues which have been highlighted.
As members of the Peace and Security Council, definitely we'll take along some of these challenges to discuss them, so that we'll be like, we'll do outreach for Nigeria in terms of policy implementation, policy framing, so that at least the good work that the military and the government is doing continues.
The Peace and Security Council delegation has visited 7 cities in Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, the 4 countries that make up the Lake Chad Basin, in the past 5 weeks. From State.
And now joining me to discuss this matter further is our State House correspondent, Kehinde Amodu. Kende, welcome to the program.
Thank you, SEGUN.
Okay, so you covered the visit of the security delegation to the presidential villa yesterday. But tell us, how effective is the Peace and Security Council in African affairs? Some say it can only back and not bite. What would you say to that?
To answer that question, we need to get a background of the coming of the Peace and Security Council,
Right.
May 2004. The coming of that body was really an excitement to member states of the African Union, because they thought that with the coming of the body, the Pan-African agenda that was part of the reasons why the African Union was birthed would be enhanced.
Right.
And African Union would have the first response to conflicts on the region. Now, what has happened? A lot of people have said that a lot of things have limited the effectiveness of the African Union Peace and Security Councils. There are inherent dysfunctions within the African Union itself, and member states itself, and then there are also external influences. If you look at a very good example, you look at the example of what happened during the Arab Springs. What was the response of the African Union during the Arab Springs? What happened to Libya? Why is it that Libya is in its state today? Because the African Union could not come in and maintain the peace and security in that country, and external forces invaded, which means there are so many rival factions.
Yes.
And today those rival factions remain. As so. Now, let's look at Mali. What happened when the conflicts in Mali arose? It took Nigeria's intervention from this side of the divide to bring some order in Mali. And we also saw France intervening in the Malian crisis. Let's come back home now. African Union Peace and Security Council, what did it do when Nigeria entered its own crisis with Boko Haram in the northeast? It took Nigeria's shuttle within the Lake Chad Basin to start to maintain some order then. Because the countries in that basin each were pretending as if the conflict or the crisis there didn't affect them. That was Nigeria's business. And until it now started crossing borders over to them. One, the refugee challenge of people fleeing from the conflict areas. You know, they couldn't push them out. And then Boko Haram also now started coming into their own territories to launch attacks. So, on the basis of that, you can't really say that the African Union Peace and Security Council has been effective. But it is a good organ to be there, you understand, because they have, let's not throw the baby away with the bathwater. They have also had some successes. But what we should talk about is their response time to the crisis.
What role does finance have to play in all of this?
It plays a huge role, actually. The question to ask is, are African countries dedicated to paying their own bills in the African Union? You find out that there is a reluctance of African countries to do so. And those countries that also now pay their bills regularly now call the shots. You understand? You can't really blame African countries. There is a pervading poverty in African countries across. And you find that there are only a few countries that hold their own and maintain their economies. Not to now talk about paying to African Union, you know. I
think there's, I can't remember the figure, about 0.2, 0.5% of, you know, all your, what do you call it, import levies on all goods that can be taxed, you know, to fund the African Union. That is a proposal.
But how many countries are paying that levy?
Well, they're hoping that by the end of the year that will come into effect. But let's move on now, and in the fight against terror, right, it seems to me that regional bodies like the MNJTF in West Africa here, they've been far more effective than, the AU, in the fight against terror groups, of course. Is that a fair thing to say, in your opinion?
Well, let's look at it critically. Also, part of the protocols that set up the African Peace and Security Council says that African countries should contribute troops and personnel to a standing command. And then two, that protocol also says that regional bodies should be able to manage the conflicts within their areas until it goes beyond them. In the past, we've seen the West African sub-region, for instance, being very successful in having a very, very effective regional fighting force in the form of ECOMOG.
ECOMOG, yeah.
You understand? And it was that force that helped in Liberia, that helped in Sierra Leone, and of recent in the conflicts in the Guinea-Bissau,
and then the Gambia, of course.
The Gambia and all that. So yes, it would be fair to say that regional forces have been more effective. We see what's happening in Eastern Africa too. There is a joint regional force between Rwanda, Kenya,
and Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. You understand? So because the countries are bound to solve the conflicts in their regions first before they go to the African Union.
Yes.
So the first response, of course, will be those regional groupings before we talk about the African Union.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to let you go for now. Kehinde Amodu, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a break now, and then Hindsight returns with more stories. Stay with us. SEGUN OJUMU. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid to.
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria
Now, welcome back. We turn our attention to Venezuela now, where two opposition leaders, Leopoldo Lopez and Antonio Ledesma, have been rearrested. This is according to their relatives. They were under house arrest after accusations of inciting violence during anti-government protests in 2014. Their whereabouts, well, family members do not know where they have been taken. The latest development comes just 2 days after a controversial vote for a constitutional assembly, which saw violence on the streets. At least 10 people were killed. President Nicolas Maduro convened the assembly to rewrite Venezuela's constitution amid spiraling anti-government protests on the 1st of May. He argues that the move could create peace and foster dialogue by bringing together different sectors of Venezuela's polarized society. But the opposition accuses Mr. Maduro of orchestrating a power grab. They boycotted the vote and called on Venezuelans to take to the streets in protest. The election was condemned by Latin American leaders, the European Union, and the U.S. It was an election where government claimed a 41% turnout, but the opposition says over 88% of people stayed away. So, when I caught up with the Deputy Mission Chief of the Embassy of Venezuela in Abuja, Maria Luna, I began by asking her what her reaction to Sunday's vote was.
Well, first of all, what happened yesterday in my country was the most powerful and civilized demonstration of sovereignty and self-determination. This 41% of participation and the advocacy of the people for defending the social rights, it's a victory for the people, to the people, through the people. So we are giving the importance to the people's power. And It's something that we have to show to the world. The attitude we have expressed yesterday is nothing more than a victory. So, despite the political fact and all this opposition struggle, it's not more that I can say that they don't want the peace, they just want the struggle. So, despite that fact, we are inviting them to come with us and create a new constitution for a better country.
Now, President Maduro says the Constituent Assembly is the only way to restore peace after months of protest and political stalemate. But his critics describe it as a power grab. Do they have a point?
Citizens come from that kind of government that are afraid of the volunteer of the power, of the people's power, and what a dignity people can do for the country when they have the power to decide what is the way for a better country with a new constitution. It's not grabbing the power.
On Monday, the U.S. imposed sanctions on President Nicolas Maduro, freezing his assets. This follows the imposition of sanctions on senior government officials a week ago. So I asked Ms. Luna how concerned her government is by those sanctions.
Of course not. We're not worried about it. It's not the first time they are treating us as imposement sanctions against the country. It's not the first time. We believe in democracy, and we create democracy. What happened yesterday was having shown to the world that we are the democracy people, so we are not worried about it. We have been calling the opposition since this process of Constituent Assembly has begun. We have been calling the opposition to come and dialogue with us, because we are part of the same people, we are part of the same country. So we are inviting them. They can participate. I mean, it's not two people, one country. We believe in unity, and that's why we did this election yesterday.
Ms. Maria Luna there, and that interview with her ends this episode of Hindsight Tonight. You can get in touch with us on Twitter and on the email addresses on your screens. From me, SEGUN, OJUMU, and the rest of the Hindsight team, goodbye.